Welcome to episode 7 of our Break the Isolation webinar series. Today we're doing Teaching Contemporary Guitar with Alyson Locke. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present and emerging. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jeff Higgins from the AMEB Federal Office. This webinar series aims to bring together our community, our musical community, keep us connected and share creative ideas during this time. You can get involved by asking our panel questions or sharing ideas with other participants during this webinar via our live chat function. We will take questions from you throughout this webinar and fit them in at the end. I'd like to say a particularly warm welcome to some of our people in Malaysia who joined us today. This is an international webinar. On to our special guest today. Alyson Locke is a multi-instrumentalist. She's a teacher at a couple of Brisbane high schools and has been active in live performance, recording, songwriting and examining for 26 years, quite an effort. She has more than 18 years experience and knowledge at teaching the Rockschool syllabus and is currently the Chief Examiner for Rockschool in Australia and New Zealand, a syllabus that is delivered by AMEB. Welcome, Alyson. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Jeff. It's lovely to be here.
Excellent. So let's get straight into this. How long have you actually been teaching online and who do you actually teach?
Okay, I've been teaching now online for around about 2 weeks. So we've just had our Queensland school holidays, so that's where I'm based, and I teach a couple of colleges in Queensland called the Moreton Bay Colleges, boys' school and a girls' school, and I'm head of contemporary music across those colleges. My job mostly involves taking rock bands and some guitar ensembles and teaching privately. Mostly guitars, a bit of ukulele, a bit of bass and a bit of drums, but predominantly guitar. And that's what my week looks like generally. So yeah, I generally teach up in, I teach up in Brisbane.
Excellent. Well, I can see you're holding a very nice cutaway acoustic guitar there. So one of the questions that constantly comes up for us is which platform do you use? There seems to be differing opinions about this, so maybe if you just tell us what you actually use, that would be a start.
Yeah, look, it wasn't a decision that I made. It was a decision made with the team of staff that I work with at the Moreton Bay Colleges. We actually use two. Our students have a choice, so we use Zoom or Microsoft Teams. But we use a particular program called My Music Staff because we can schedule our lessons into that, and then Zoom connects nicely with that particular program. So that's what most of the students use, though some prefer Microsoft Teams, so we're using that as well. We give them the option as to what they find easier. Yeah. Okay,
so you'd be across a number of different platforms, and then I suppose you then, as you just alluded to, you give your students a choice as well, and you're happy to fit in with that, are you?
Yeah. Look, we have to. We have to try and make it happen. I think that's the thing here. Is that that's the key. Is that we want to get those lessons in. We want to make sure that they're not missing out on their music lessons. And anything we can do to try and make that happen, we need to. So they've got that option, and that seems to be working quite well. So I've just asked each of my students, what would you prefer to use? They tell me, and then we schedule the lessons with whatever program they've chosen.
Great. I know that online teaching is a whole different world to be involved with, and you're a 2-week veteran of it. I also know that you told me earlier that you see this as an opportunity, not something that's difficult. Tell us about the way you see this as an opportunity through the various different facets of online teaching.
Yeah, well, I mean, but prior to this, this whole virus thing, I'd never delivered a lesson online. I hadn't done it. But what I did realise after my very first lesson was that it was a whole new type of engagement happening between me and the student. And the first thing I noticed was it was novel. To them, it seemed novel. So, you know, we both got online, and that very first lesson too, it was a bit exciting actually. It was like, wow, we've made this happen. We've actually got this program working. You're there, I'm there. We're talking to each other through a screen. This is different, but it's kind of cool. And let's have some fun with this, you know. So it was quite positive right from the start. And I think that is a good start. So, you know, moving from that place of, actually, this isn't too difficult. We can do it. We can do it. And working from that point. And I guess from there, yeah, when I say it was a different type of engagement, obviously a different type of learning, I felt that we could actually embrace. And, you know, you get to talk to parents that you might not normally get to talk to because they might be home, or ideally they're home too. You know, you get to look at the student's setup. You'll get to look at their equipment. Show me, Rocco, where is your amp? Okay, let's have a look at the settings on that. So the sorts of stuff you might not normally get to see, you know, because I do teach in a school setting, so I don't get to see how they've got it set up at home. But through this platform, we've got it all sorted. So that's been really good.
Yeah. And you're talking about preparation in advance as well, where you had a few weeks at school preparing for remote learning prior to school closure.
Yeah.
Make sure everybody had all the exam pieces and backing tracks.
That's right. Yeah, just really fortunate to work in a school that was so proactive, and particularly in the music department, such a great team, really proactive in sort of not sort of, I guess, stuffing around there. We all looked at it and what are we going to use? This is likely to happen. It looks like the school may close down for we don't know how long. Better make sure we've got this sorted. And so we actually had some meetings to go through how to work the gear. So we were never on our own trying to work this out. We had plenty of support.
Yeah. Did you think there are, I suppose there are possibly less interruptions in online teaching that you'd have in a busy school? Would that be right?
That's one of the things that I really did notice straight up was that when I talk about engagement, that there weren't those typical interruptions where you get a knock on the door. Hey, miss, I need a lead. Sure, over there. Hey, miss, when's my lesson? It's on the board there, have a look, Rocker. You know, just those sorts of things weren't happening at all. And it just felt more personal, that connection.
Yeah. And I suppose there are new ways of teaching here, which you've had to pick up on very quickly as well. Would that be right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about things like chord shapes, for instance.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that I did feel that if there was no point, I guess, in trying to reproduce the type of lesson that I would do in a studio at school, because I'm not in my studio at school. I'm at home. So that I just didn't feel like that was a good option. So I had to really think about, what am I going to teach? How can we make the most of this time? How can I deliver lessons that are highly effective despite the remote learning situation? So one example that I sort of went with and did with quite a few of my students was I would, rather than say, okay, play these notes, or, you know, dealing with, you know, first fret, you know, second string, that sort of thing, which gets a bit tricky, particularly with younger learners, starting with something they know. Okay, so for example, I would say, let's put down your F bar chord. Take off pinky. What have we got? F7. Okay, and then I'd say, okay, take off, put pinky back down, take off your middle finger. What have we got? F minor. Okay, you know, and talking about F major 7. So starting with something they knew, and then moving from that point to create, I guess, a new type of lesson. I think that's sort of how I went about it. So yeah, and then of course we'd slide up and F sharp, G sharp, and we do all of the shapes moving up the fretboard. I said to them, it's just like your times table. You just got to, there's no way around it. You've just got to memorize it. You know, it's like up the notes on a piano. It's so different. And then, but definitely the key there was, the point was starting with something they know and then building on that. That seemed like a good one.
Yeah, I think so. For our international people, I'm not sure how universal the word pinky is, but Alyson was referring to her little finger there on the top string. And I guess you're having a more personalised approach now, or personalised time, I suppose, with your students. And you can talk about the kind of repertoire that they'd like to be playing. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's certainly, again, because of, yeah, that whole space that is so more personal. We would have conversations that I don't think we always used to have, or maybe not so often, but I'd ask them, what are you listening to at the moment? And sometimes students can be a little bit shy about that. They think you would know it, you might not like it. But I said, come on, what's on your phone? I can see your phone there on the desk. Come on, what's in there? What have you been listening to? And they'd start to tell me, and I'd make some notes, and then I'd go and look it up if I didn't know it, and try and send them some of that music online later on after the lesson. So just trying to connect with them. What is it you like? And getting them thinking about what is it you like about music, and what is it you like about the guitar? So I've been able to find some really great TED Talks as well from great players like Tommy Emmanuel, sending those through to keep them inspired. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds terrific, and a great source of knowledge for the kids as well. So tell us a bit about the home studio for your students, and you obviously have to help out there with the kind of setup in some ways that they need to have. I'd also be interested in knowing what happens with the kids' parents. Do they get involved? Are they there at the lesson, or are they watching on, or what, and how do you handle that?
I haven't seen many parents, but I get the feeling they're in the room. They don't want to be too intrusive. They're trying to be respectful too. But I have managed to see some parents who come and say, hello, Alyson, just a hello. In some cases, I've had a good chat to them about some resources that the student might need, that they need to get, and also including the parents in that home setup. So, do they have, the things they need? What have we got here? Have you got your amp, and is it nearby if you need an amp, if you're playing electric? Do they have their music stand? Do they have a guitar stand? Have they got their capo, their picks, their tuner? Have they got all these bits and pieces? As a guitar student, you need that stuff. So just having the opportunity to go through that. But one really important point, I think, I try to get the kids to make sure they've got their music stand up here towards the headstock of the guitar. So not over here. So the camera throws things out a little bit, and they're just trying to make sure that they can see you and you can see them. But it's important to remember that the line of vision for a guitarist is always towards the left hand. I mean, we do look at our right hand sometimes, but it's more automatic. We're checking. We're looking in that direction, so therefore the music stand should be there. I've seen so many times when a guitarist has hopped up on stage ready to play, and a roadie or someone moves their music stand. They're saying, well, we can't see their hands. It's like, no, if anyone should move, maybe the audience should, because that's their line of vision. So if they're playing, reading and moving that way, that's crazy. So yeah, another thing.
It's really interesting. How do you think about your camera setup?
Again, there's so many variables to this, really, but sometimes it's good to have your iPad or your computer a little bit elevated, depending on what you're on. iPads aren't so easy to angle, whereas a laptop you can move the top forward and back. A desktop you can usually move that as well. So I think it does depend on the device, but having it up a little bit or even lower, looking up, that can be handy. But essentially, the main thing is, can I see both hands, and can they see mine? One thing that I do, if I'm trying to do something, if they were to try and see what I'm playing here and what fingers, for example, that's really, they can't really see too clearly. So what I've been doing is at times bringing the guitar right up close, and just slowing it right down. So I might focus on, say, the right hand sometimes, that sort of thing. And then likewise, just coming up to that left hand as well. So they can see both nice and clearly, and slowing it right down. There's no other way.
And do you get your students to come up close to the camera as well and show you what they're doing, and then take it from there?
Yeah, I have at times. I've asked them to move themselves a little. Yeah. But that's been a little bit tricky at times, I have to say.
Okay, let's move on to a question that also comes up quite constantly. You and I both know the guitar's got to tune very quickly and very easily. So I guess you don't start the lesson until the guitar is seemingly in tune, but I guess Zoom will kind of distort that sound. So how do you handle the whole tuning aspect with the student?
Yeah, tuning's an interesting one, particularly for string instruments. I think. Look, you know, a lot of guitarists will just grab their tuner. You know, I've got one here. They grab the tuner, and they'll just tune up even before the lesson. A lot of them are right to go if they're able to do that. But the younger students is where it gets complicated or tricky, and often they've got their tuner on and they're having a good crack at it, and they'll say, "Miss, yes, it's good. I've got it. It's right in the middle. I've got it. Yes." And it is, and you've tuned perfectly, you've tuned your E string to a perfect E flat. So obviously chromatic tuners, and then that's sometimes what happens. So we end up with a guitar that's tuned perfectly to the wrong note, or wrong notes. Okay, so then what I've then done, and I've enjoyed doing this actually, is just saying, just take a tuner away. I'll play my E, have a listen, play yours. Does it need to come up or down? And just going through each string and just, you know, reminding them that it is important to use your ear as well. Don't just whack on the tuner and you know, head down that path. Remember that, you know, you're developing your ear as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's an interesting situation, tuning. It's one of those things that I can't play a guitar unless it's in tune. As simple as that.
Yeah.
Let's move on to some of the sound and technical issues that may come up. I suppose the quality of the internet connection, as we found out from time to time, plays a big part. Then there's the backing tracks. Do you want to talk about backing tracks for a while and how the distortion can sound even more distorted?
Yeah, look, yeah, I mean, essentially it's all, so much of, you know, the success of an online lesson can come down to that quality of the internet connection. And, you know, I've had some students and I thought, wow, that was not a great connection. And then I've hooked in again the next week and the internet connection's been fine. So you just don't know. Yeah, in terms of what I found is that most of my students do Rockschool exams. Now, some also do classical as well, but a lot of them do Rockschool. And I tried to play the backing tracks from my end for them because most Rockschool songs have backing tracks. And so I tried to play the backing tracks, and through the computer, it just didn't work very well at all. So I've had to tell my students, look, you do have all the tracks. We sorted that before we went, you know, into isolation. So you'll need to play it from your end. And that's actually been a really good thing because it's making them think more about balance. And we don't, well, a lot of my students are actually possibly going to have to record themselves for their exams. So now that there's all these video exams that the AMEB have created, and Rockschool have created, they'll be actually doing their exam probably at home with an iPad in front of them. They'll have to record themselves and they'll have to think about the balance between track and their instrument. So that's something we're talking about. And I've said to them, you know, it's such a great practice tool as well, just to run through. You've got your 5 songs, you've got to run through them. You've got to think about the balance and you can't stop between takes. You know, you've got to just run right through it. You press start and then stop at the end of 5 songs. Such a great learning tool. So I've said to them, you need to not only just do that for your exam, but you need to practice doing that at home now too. A run through of 5 songs, you know, start that process and thinking about, you know, sound and the balance.
Let's talk about some of the techniques, which I think would be quite difficult to teach online, certainly. I'm thinking of things like palm muting, you know, where you put your palm onto the strings.
Yeah.
Anything else that you found difficult at the same time as well?
Yeah, I just grabbed my electric. Definitely a bit tricky, palm muting. Whoa, is that going to fall down? Oh, hang on. There we go. So it's something I noticed straight away with the online teaching was that it was difficult, particularly for my more advanced students, to try and teach. I'll just get some distortion happening.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries. So that there's an artificial harmonic. So those sorts of techniques, artificial harmonics, So nice and get on a Steve Vai gem with Joe Satriani humbucker, but you've got to get a bit of the flesh and a bit of the pick as well. Like that's a tricky thing to try and communicate to students, as has been just normal harmonics, just general harmonics, and of course car music. You know, just getting that feel of the palm against the strings. Difficult to communicate through online. So what I've had to do in that instance is try and find YouTube videos where, you know, some rockers have done a great video and with great camera angles of those sorts of techniques, and I'm sending those through to my students because I just felt, you know, I mean, I could probably do it, but it'd take a while, and someone else has already done it. So find the YouTube clip, send it through to your students. Yeah, for those more intricate sorts of techniques.
Thank you for that, and apologies to anyone who's just lost their hearing in that last session. So let's talk about video exams and that quality of sound that you need to have to be able to examine.
Look, and again, that's practice too. You know, that's trying it out. You know, you wouldn't want your exam to be a first run through. You'd be putting your amp in a position, you know, thinking about, and between songs as well, you know, what do I want? Do I want distortion? Do I want just a bit of overdrive? If I want distortion, what type of distortion? How much? And you know, if it's a clear song, just having all of that stuff sorted, and the levels. You know, so even if you've got a jump, what they call the jump is the difference between clear and distortion. So if you were playing sort of Teen Spirit, for example, but you know, we all know that starts off clear and then gets heavy. So, and that when you press that pedal, the difference in sound again, you really have to make sure you've got that balance right, and then you know, try it out with your iPad or your phone or however you're going to record it, and then listen to it back.
Yeah, and I suppose some of the kids you teach are pretty conversant with this as well. Everyone's recording their new album in their bedroom on GarageBand or something like that. So are you finding that with the kids, that they know to make these videos and do them well?
Yeah, look, I think so. I mean, this is different. This is their exam repertoire, whereas a lot of kids that are creating stuff on GarageBand, it's their own sort of, they're writing their own stuff. They're coming up with their own ideas. So this is a little bit different, I think, and possibly a little more complex. You know, so yeah, I do have it surprises me. They've got an interface at home. They're working from digital audio workstations, GarageBand. But a lot of students have got this stuff already.
Great. I know you're a big advocate for theory. Do you want to give a quick shout out for what else we could be doing about theory?
Yeah, I think online learning is a great platform to get some theory done. You know, all my students generally work from the Rockschool theory, popular music theory syllabus, although some of mine also work from the AMEB and traditional theory. And so they've got their book, and so even during online lessons, let's open up your theory book, let's do a page. We try to do a page in my standard lessons anyway, so that's one thing that hasn't had to change too much at all.
Right.
Very easily talk about that.
Yeah, okay, we were having a bit of a problem there with your visual. This is a truly live webinar, but you seem to be back now. We've had a few questions already about the obvious one, which is how do you teach bands and ensembles, and how do you keep them together? Maybe your feelings about that.
Look, yeah, where I work, it's something that together again our staff really thought about. What can we do here? And you know, ensemble music went up on a group sort of SharePoint site at school. So the kids had access to that. They can access ensemble music, so they've all got it. You know, obviously we keep teaching that ensemble music in our private one-on-one lessons. So it might be focusing on their exam stuff, but we're also ensuring that ensemble music kicks along too, and we're not forgetting about it. But one interesting way that I found that I was able to keep one of my ensembles going, because I take guitar ensembles as well as 3 rock bands, and one of my rock bands, we've decided to do some collaborative remote recording, which is something actually they've been quite well prepared for, because these boys in this particular band called Anchor at the Moreton Bay Boys College, actually did a Rockschool music production exam last year, which there's a scenario sent through to them where someone from overseas sends them some MIDI chords and some loops, and they have to then create a pop song. And I said to the boys, this is what you've trained for. This is perfect. So let's do it. So what we did is the main songwriter in the band, he would put down his vocal and his guitar part to a click, send it over to the drummer. The drummer sends it to the bass player, who sent it to the keyboard player, who then sent it to the lead guitarist. It went back to the songwriter, and he's mixed and mastered the song. So that's one way of keeping an ensemble going during this time. But interestingly, I've been checking in with the band every week. We have a group meeting through Microsoft Teams, and I said, you know, fellas, I think we might keep this going. We might continue to do this even when we're back at school, because when studio time's it's hard to get everyone together, or the studio's not available. I said, you know, let's just keep doing this. We can perfect this system, I think, as we go. The more we do it, and they seem pretty keen.
I'm pretty sure that's the way the Rolling Stones did it on the weekend with that big worldwide broadcast. They all sent each other their contribution to "You Can't Always Get What You Want." So finally, Alison, if you're going to sum up here, I know you sent me a lovely email talking about the care and connection. Did you want to finish up before we take questions by telling us about that?
Yeah, look, I think it doesn't matter what platform you're teaching from, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's remote. It's all about genuine care for what you teach, care for your instrument, and genuine care for your students. Most importantly, they pick up on that real quick, and I think that's something that's come through for me with online remote learning, is that we can connect in a different way. It's actually been exciting. I've enjoyed it. I don't know what I expected, but I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed establishing a new type of connection, or rebuilding connections, all that sort of thing with students. And yeah, it's just been different, and different can be great. It has been great for me.
That's great. I think we could just take what you said and frame it. It's a beautiful sentiment. Thank you. So we'll move on to some questions now. Here's one. How do you establish a good rapport with a pupil you've never met and are teaching for the first time?
That is a great question. The new students are always the hardest to teach from an online perspective, because they don't know anything yet. Or maybe they do know something, but you're not sure of what they know. That's tricky, because often you're involved, particularly if they're young, in putting their fingers on frets and you're helping them get that happening. That's tricky. But I think to establish a connection, again, ask them about what they like. Why did you choose the guitar? What do you like about it? Do you know someone that plays? What are your favourite songs? Who are your favourite artists? And that's probably the best place to start. From that point, you try and find something that you think, okay, well, they just mentioned Taylor Swift, or they've just mentioned AC/DC. Maybe we can try and do a bit of some of those songs, just to get them keen, on board, so to speak. And then from that point, you can move to other things. But again, it is important to listen to them and ask them what they like if you want to establish good connection.
Yeah. Here's a good question, which has come up a few times in these webinars. Are you finding online teaching more intense and mentally tiring than going into school?
A little bit. I found that I get a little bit sore. I have to get up and walk around the yard. I find that at first I thought, I've got to fit myself into this box here, this screen. That seemed a little cagey or something, whereas normally I'm up in my room, and I'm moving around. I might go to the photocopier, I'll go to my computer, I'll do different things, but everything is sort of here, and I feel, you've got to stay in front of the screen. You don't want to take off on your student and go and do other things. That has felt a little bit more intense. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you using chord diagrams and sharing those with the kids beforehand or during the lessons as well?
Yeah, sometimes we've had to do that, because again, it can be a bit unclear. So yeah, I'm sending through some chord diagrams as well, and trying to explain how they read those.
And do you have another question here, any suggestions for teaching those students who are complete beginners?
You know, yeah, okay. Again, it really does depend on their age. That's, you know, if they're older, they've got stronger hands, they're more capable of doing other things. But, you know, often just getting them, just if they're on an electric guitar, you know, just the 4-finger sort of thing, because that gets the alternate picking going and the left hand moving as well, including pinky. So you're covering a lot there just with that one exercise. That's something I like to get going. If they're really little, again, it's often good just to start with a song that they know.
Yeah.
Just some basic chords and get them strumming. Just, you know, keep it simple. You want them to come back the next week. You know.
Are you actually playing online with them at the same time as they're playing? Because there's always a bit of a delay with Zoom. So do you do that, or do you manage that at all?
Yeah, you know, I've tried that and it doesn't work so well. There is a bit of a delay and then it cuts out sometimes. I've had a couple of lessons where that's worked okay, but for the most part, no. So they play and then I'll say, now you listen to me. And so I'll try and play the piece for them. They can hear how it goes. So yeah, it works out okay. I play it, they play it, and we listen to each other. So it hasn't been disastrous that I can't play along, but it's a little bit, yeah, actually it's a little bit frustrating when you can't do improvisation quite so much because, you know, normally we'd have a jam, that sort of thing, and now, you know, I sort of play something over the top. Can't do that so much now, but that's okay.
All right. One more question. Somebody's actually put a question in here. Can you play Eye of the Tiger? It's either a yes or a no, Alyson.
Yes, I suspect that person is someone from my school because I played it on assembly as at a recessional. As a bit of a joke.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Alyson, thank you so much for your time today. It's been highly informative, and hopefully for everybody out there, all your guitar teachers, it's been very informative as well. I just want to recognize that a lot of you teachers play in bands. You're not making too much money at the moment because there ain't no gigs happening. I'll just stand up. You can see my t-shirt here, which was bought through the website Sound of Silence. It says Endangered Species, and it's a Reg Mombassa painting. Thank you everyone today, and especially thanks to Alyson. You can find a lot of information on the AMEB site, ameb.edu.au, under the We Are Here to Help section. Don't forget, you can now get from AMEB a free theory course. You need to go to that website as well. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the next webinar. In the meantime, thank you very much, and thank you again, Alyson. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Jeff.